Hello, my fantastic students. It's Miss P, and today I'm going to do a little demonstration to help you understand cell transport because it's muy importante, okay? All right, so I'm going to use this little device here. It's called a diffuser. Some of you might know what it's used for if you're a tea drinker. So what you do is you put your tea leaves in here. You close it up, you pop it into your glass, you pour hot water over it, and you have a delicious cup of tea. And what's happening is the hot water is diffusing across this semi-permeable membrane, this mesh right here, which lets some things in and some things not, right? So the water can go in, but the tea leaves cannot go out. So that's what makes it semi-permeable. So what happens is the water then begins to soften those tea leaves and extract their delicious flavor molecules. And then those flavor molecules diffuse from the diffuser right here into the surrounding water. That is called osmosis, moving from less concentration to greater concentration. Now, diffusion is something that happens all the time. You can see the word diffusion all over the place. You can buy a diffuser, which is something that you use to make a room smell better. You put a little scent on something and then you heat it up, and that scent moves from its what is it? That isn't not even a word. From its area of heavy concentration and diffuses around your room to an area of lesser concentration. That's what diffusion is, always from an area of greater to lesser concentration. So when you walk in your house, especially now around the holidays, when you walk into your house and you smell delicious food, cookies, pie, and those little scent particles have made it to your nose, it's because they have diffused from the area of greater concentration, your kitchen, to an area of lesser concentration, the rooms outside the kitchen, the other areas of the house, until they make it to your nose, right into your nose. That's diffusion. And that requires no energy whatsoever. It's just molecules moving from where there's a lot of them to where there's fewer of them. Requires no energy at all. That's passive transport. There are three types of passive transport. There's osmosis, which we talked about with the diffusing ball. And we're going to talk about more in depth in subsequent videos. There is diffusion, like the diffusion of scent particles throughout your house that we just talked about, moving from greater to lesser concentration. And there is also facilitated diffusion. And facilitated just means that something needs to help it happen, because not all molecules are the same. Some molecules are big, some are small, some have a charge, right? If you remember that from our first unit, some molecules have a charge, some molecules do not. So I'm going to use this beautiful tea diffuser, and we're going to pretend it's a cell with this nice semi-permeable membrane. And the first thing that I'm going to try to send through my cell is water. So let's see. Do we think that water is going to go through? Can water diffuse across the cell membrane? Look at it diffusing, dripping right out the bottom. Why is it that water can diffuse across a cell membrane? Well, this just makes it easier to tell, right? Yeah. Because water is a very small molecule, and it's not charged. So if you're a small molecule and you're not a charged molecule, you can simply diffuse across, in and out of a cell, right across the membrane. You don't need any help whatsoever, okay? Not all molecules are small. Demonstration number 2. Some molecules are bigger. So inside this cell, I have some big and some small molecules. The small molecules are represented by flour, and flour, imagine one little particle of flour. It's tiny, it's a tiny little particle. And then we have larger particles represented by beans and barley. So if I close this, which one of these things is able to move through the cell without help? Right, only the flour, because the flour is tiny, tiny, tiny small. So water and really small uncharged particles can simply diffuse through a cell membrane, okay? But if you are a big particle, like you're a big bean, or you're a big piece of barley, which you probably can't see, big piece of barley, you cannot simply diffuse, here, I'll put it right up there. It's too big. You can't simply diffuse across the cell membrane if you're that large. I mean, look at how large. Look at how large that is. No, you can't do it. You're too large. Or maybe you have a charge. You have a large charge. You cannot simply diffuse. What will happen is, if you're large and have a charge, you have to be facilitated through. And that just means that you need another molecule to help you. And in this case, the other molecule will be a protein that is embedded on, I can't get it to stay, that is embedded on the, ooh, there we go. In this case, the protein molecule is embedded in the cell membrane, and it will help these large particles diffuse down their gradient. And anytime that happens, it's called facilitated diffusion, just because they needed help, okay? Those are the three types of passive transport. No energy required, things are moving with their gradient. But if you're large and charged, that's called facilitated diffusion, because you need something to help you through. You're too large and you have a charge and you just can't go through without help from that protein. Okay, so examples of some really small molecules that can simply diffuse and require no energy, simply diffuse across the cell membrane and require no energy. Water, as was in our example, right? And that flour made it through because flour is really small, so small uncharged particles. So what are some small uncharged particles that are around us that are moving through the cell passively? Oxygen can move in and out of a cell with no energy, moving with its gradient. So oxygen, carbon dioxide can move in and out of a cell with its gradient passively. Simple diffusion requires no energy. Now, what if you're a large charged molecule? Well, then you are going to need, your transport will need to be facilitated by a channel protein, okay? So types of large charged molecules are hydrogen ions, sodium ions, chlorine ions, any really large molecules like a carbohydrate or an amino acid, stuff like that. So they're too large to go through passively, not passively, they're too large to go through to simply diffuse across, and they're charged. So they don't require energy, but they do require facilitation by one of those very nice channel proteins that will say, okay, I will move you into and out of the cell. I'll help. That's what facilitation means. I will help you move in and out of the cell because you're large and you're charged. Okay? So those are some examples. Okay. Now let's talk about active transport. So active transport is a type of transport that requires energy. That requires energy. And energy, whenever we talk about energy in the cell, we're talking about ATP, adenine triphosphate. That's the energy molecule. It's the energy currency of the cell. So if you have a molecule sitting out here and it wants to get in, you need energy in order for that to happen. And an example of active transport is endocytosis. And endocytosis is when a large particle fuses with the cell membrane and pushes, and energy allows it to move into the cell as it's surrounded by cell membrane. That's called endocytosis. Now, if it's in the cell and it needs to get out, the same thing happens, but in reverse. It fuses with the cell membrane and pushes out. And anytime you're pushing something, that requires energy, and pushes out. And that is called exocytosis because it's exiting the cell, and that too requires energy. So that's a brief overview of active and passive transport. And in the next video, we will be going in depth about another little visual to help you understand the different types of osmosis: hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic. All right, coolio. See you later.